Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
This is your time. This is your call to arms. For the Cryptid Connection is your voice. I'm your host, Jennifer.
And I'm your host, Stephen. Welcome to Cryptid Connection.
The Cryptid Connection podcast is brought to you by CryptidConnection.com, a website dedicated to you, one who has interest in all things cryptid and paranormal. CC is a place where you can enjoy a hassle-free lifestyle and community of Bigfoot pursuit. Stop by via the internet and visit. Guarantee you will start to feel at home. CryptidConnection.com.
Hey everybody, I want to apologize. This show's coming out a week late. We started Operation Cryptid Mayhem last week, and that's going to be an ongoing project that's going to go on throughout the next year at least. The original idea was we were going to release this show from the field with a live field update in the process. We had a special guest lined up and everything, and the weather was such that it just did not work out. Because of that, we're going to do things a little bit different this week. I am releasing 2 shows. We have this show, which you're listening to right now, which is the public show. It's the general interview and everything, and y'all are going to like it. It's what you normally are used to. But I also have an extended private member-only show that I'm releasing on CryptidConnection.com. This is about another hour of content where all of our discussions that were wide-ranging from this interview, where they went to. This is all the extra content. This interview on your show, on the public show, is coming in just a hair under 2 hours. The actual interview was over 3 hours. And that extra content I've cut out, and I've created an extended show so that you can hear the content there. We touch into a lot of subjects. We go into Loch Ness Monster, Aleister Crowley, pirates and cryptids. We get into a very in-depth kind of lowdown on southeast Oklahoma and the whole situation out there. A lot of stuff I think that honestly our more hardcore listeners would really enjoy. If you do want to hear this content, please go to CryptidConnection.com and choose the Amateur Research Enthusiast level. It is the $5 a month level. It supports the podcast. Once you choose that membership level, you'll be able to access the member-only podcast and content. And that is where I'm going to be posting this. I invite everybody who wants to, please come out, take a look, join the podcast, support it, support the website. Everybody needs to come in. We have a wonderful thing going on. Anyway, that's it. I want you all to sit back and listen to Mr. Anthony Shields. This interview was actually kind of surprising, and it went in a lot of directions I didn't expect it to. I know Jennifer was very surprised by a few things. Anthony's an interesting person. Y'all sit back, relax. Here comes the interview. Hi, everyone. This episode, we've got Anthony Shields. Anthony Shields has been kind of an up-and-coming researcher in the Bigfoot community. And tonight's kind of his big debut, at least as far as our show is concerned. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Hello, everybody. Hi, Stephen. And hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Anthony. So, how are you in relation to your Bigfoot research lately? Can you tell us, our audience, a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and give us a little bit about the background that you've had before you were introduced to Bigfoot?
Okay. I'm from Nebraska originally, and for the last 20 years I've lived in Kansas. And both states, you'll know if you're involved in this subject matter don't have a lot for sightings. So when I started to kind of expand out beyond that bubble, I found it perhaps a little more fascinating than people that live in those areas, that take them as, I think something familiar. To me, it was just fascinating the more I found out about it as I got closer to the southern states. I'm a master barber, which just is fancy talk for somebody who's been cutting hair for a long time, who's pretty good at it and has solid books. I'm booked out several weeks. I do some elite local clients. I won't name drop, but I enjoy what I do, and what I do kind of ties into how I got into Bigfooting, because as some of your audience might know, you confide in and get to know, and in many cases become friends with your hairdresser or barber. We're one of the few people that kind of break the personal bubble with people, and just that alone kind of opens up a facilitation for talking and communicating that doesn't always come with coworkers or your standard acquaintances. And what's neat about my particular circumstances, in the last 15 years or so, I've owned my own private barbershop, and I don't have anybody that works with me. I also offer free beer to my clients. So when my clients come in, it's just me and them alone in a room while I give them one of the best haircuts you can get, wink, wink, and they enjoy a beer. And this has enabled me to have some really fascinating conversations. I've been saying for a long time I could write a book about some of the stories and things that I've heard throughout my years of being a barber, and the wide range of people I've gotten to know, from brain surgeons to interpreters to missionaries to former Vietnam fighter pilots to people that are high up in Coke industries. And, it's just, I could go on and on and on. You do this for 20 years and you cut as many heads as I have. You get to know a wide range of people. And many of these people become reoccurring regulars, which means they come in once a month, and I spend a solid half hour with them once a month, just me and them alone in a room, catching up, talking. And if you think about it, how many of your own relatives do you even do that with? Do you even get together with your best friend from high school once a month for half an hour and catch up on things? So it enables me to have really close connections with some of these people. And as the years go by, they kind of open up to me. And like I said, I've heard some really interesting stuff over the years, and some of what I've heard led me to this very new kind of, not new, but passion of Bigfooting, squatching. And I guess to conclude, I'm married. I got a beautiful wife. Her name's Simone, and my son, Ian, he's 20 and in college and works. He loves animals. I no longer have the property in Nebraska. I did have some land there with my family, or my family had land there rather, and I frequented kind of between Kansas and Nebraska often, and now I'm just in Kansas, which as far as squatching in Missouri and Oklahoma and Arkansas goes, is actually a pretty prime spot to be. Even though they aren't here, I'm located just as equally as far from trying to go to the hot spots in Arkansas as I am from the ones in Oklahoma and the ones in Missouri. And that's proved to be kind of beneficial. And I almost like being able to step away from it and come back to Kansas. I feel like if I lived in one of those areas, I would never stop, right? I'd be out there all the time, and I would probably be divorced by now. So the fact that I have to take some breaks and is probably a good thing for me. I tend to get a bit impulsive and addicted to things. So I think that kind of wraps up my history. I could go into the story that got me into it if you guys would like to hear it, as a longtime client of mine, or I don't know how the show works, if we come back around to that kind of stuff later, or where to go from there. But that kind of is me in a nutshell.
No, Anthony, go ahead and give us a little bit of how you got into Bigfooting from your background.
Okay. Well, I was an alien dude, to be honest with you. Growing up, I grew up reading Zachariah Stitchin, was into this way before Ancient Aliens was around. I used to and go on and on and on about the missing link in Aliens and how many planets there were and the stars being suns, et cetera, and would kind of baffle my friends' minds with that. Never gave Bigfoot much thought. It was kind of in the Loch Ness Monster corner of things for me. And not that there isn't anything valid with Loch Ness Monster. You get to know the history of the lake. Anything's possible in the serpent world when it comes to stuff like that. But regardless, I never gave it much credibility. And same with the Sasquatch thing. Like I was one of those people that thought of it like a one thing. There was one Bigfoot out there walking around, right? Like it was a Loch Ness monster. And I went through most of my life just kind of with that on the back shelf. And then those Bigfoot shows started coming out, right? You had Finding Bigfoot and, you know, a couple of other of those type of shows here in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And, you know, I would watch them, but I didn't take them seriously. To be honest with you, I kind of laughed at them more than anything. You had, you know, these guys running around putting donuts on trees and whooping into the forest. So didn't take it too seriously. We went one Father's Day. My wife suggested the weather was bad. We hopped in the RV and we hopped over to Oklahoma to a place called Turner Falls and spent the weekend there to kind of avoid the bad weather. And we were out doing some hiking in the countryside there. The mountains and everything were super Bigfooty, for lack of a better term, or squatchy. And so jokingly, I did some whoops. I knocked on some you know, trees just to kind of embarrass my wife, and it worked. And that led to her the following, I think it was my birthday. She got me a little Bigfoot bobblehead. Okay. And it took me a minute I looked at the thing and I'm like, oh, nice. Thanks, honey. Bigfoot bobblehead. And she reckoned back to remember we were hiking, you were making fun of those TV shows and blah, blah, blah. And I got the joke then, and I was like, okay, Bigfoot bobblehead. Well, what do you do with a bobblehead? There's really I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to, you know, put it on my kitchen table. So I brought it out to the barber shop, something for the kids to look at. And there sat this Bigfoot bobblehead. Now, here's where it starts to get kind of interesting. A guy, it sat there for some time, maybe a year. And, a guy whose hair I've been cutting now for 20 years, but at the time about 15 years, came in, and he's an older guy in his late 70s then, he's in his 80s now. And he comes in and he glances at the bobblehead, and the bobblehead clearly says on the bottom of it, Bigfoot, like in big kind of cartoony letters. And he says, oh, you got yourself a Sasquatch doll. And he said it just like the Sasquatch doll, kind of laughed at it and went and put his head in the shampoo bowl for me to wash him. Now, I thought it was interesting that he wouldn't even know the word Sasquatch. It clearly said Bigfoot on it. And to me, to even kind of know the layers into the words, you got to know something about it. I knew what the word Sasquatch was, but I guess I was just shocked that he would. He's a real straightforward old military guy, still gets a flat top, you know, kind of dude. And anyways, I'm shampooing this guy. Again, he's my side note. My father passed away several years ago, and I really bond with some of these older guys that come in. I look to them for advice. A lot of them know that my father has passed. In many cases, I was even their barber during that whole process, and they kind of look out for me. They talk about medical stuff with me, love, life, laughter, loss, those kinds of things. And this particular guy, he was at my wedding. He's met my family. I know him and trust him. He's a very trustworthy guy. So start shampooing his hair, and I bring up so Sasquatch, huh? What do you know about Sasquatch? And I said it in reference to him knowing the word beyond Bigfoot. And he matter-of-factly looked at me and said, oh, I saw one back in the 80s. Now, I guess it's hard to explain. You always have to know the guy. He doesn't screw around, pull your leg, rather. But he was serious, and he wasn't saying it to get a razz out of me. He just looked straight ahead. And I said, well, you got to give me more than that. I won't say his name. I'll change his name. We'll call him Bob. I said, you got to give me more than that, Bob. What do you mean you saw one back in the 80s? Still kind of standoffish and laughing inside. Like, what do you mean you saw one? There's only one. There's only one Bigfoot running around. That's kind of what I'm thinking still. And he starts telling me the story about, it's worth mentioning, he was a former fighter pilot in Vietnam. And when he got back, he bought a crop dusting plane. And he did crop dusting down along the Oklahoma-Kansas border. And he would store his plane in a Quonset down there with a farmer that he had ties to. And he would go down there and crop dust. He came around a tree break while going from field to field and saw what he initially thought was a kid in a gorilla suit, or perhaps a stuffed gorilla suit. Now, it's worth mentioning also that he knew a lot of the children in the area. This was the 80s. They would hear the crop dusting plane and would, kind of come out of the farms and watch him fly around. Growing up in Nebraska, I can identify with that. There's not much to do. You don't have cable out there in the 80s. So hearing a plane flying overhead is something worth going and investigating. And he would wave at the kids and occasionally do little tricks and turns and stuff to kind of keep them entertained. And then he, upon seeing this, what he was telling me he thought was a monkey costume, initially thought it was these kids messing with him, until the thing dropped down on all fours and started tearing across this field. That really got his attention. He, as he put it, didn't dump that pass, which I interpreted to mean he quit focusing on spraying for a minute and started to guide his plane towards this animal, creature, whatever you want to call it, to investigate it further. And he's telling me as he's getting closer to it, he's going well over 100 miles an hour. I think he said he was doing 120 to 150, somewhere in there. And this thing was going way faster than it should have been. He predicted it to be going perhaps close to 40 miles an hour, easily over 30 miles an hour. And as he got closer to it and could start to really see the details, is when his face started to get kind of serious. And he said, he's not proud of it, but he's hunted people out of planes, and this wasn't a person, and he's hunted animals out of tree stands for years, and this wasn't an animal. He said animals are rear wheel drive, and this thing was all wheel drive, and he could clearly see the hand in the front pulling at what he called the thrash and throwing it behind it as it was running across this field. Now, the creature looked up at him the first time, and he didn't make eye contact with it, but it was looking at him. He wasn't close enough to see into its eyes the very first time, but he could see its expression. And he said its expression was one of kind of fear or concern. And then the animal looked down to make sure that it still had its footing, kept propelling itself forward. And as he got closer, it looked up at him again. And this time it had a whole different expression on its face, and it had a clear expression of anger. And he said, and he's still in the shampoo bowl at this time, and he kind of made eye contact with me, and he said, animals don't make facial expressions. And I've never had any reason to think about these kinds of things before. I've since realized, after doing a lot of research for the last several years, he's right. And a lot of what he is describing there I have found to be key trigger things for these southern boogers, Sasquatches, creek devils, whatever, falk monster, whatever term you want to call them in that particular region. The story still continues to get interesting. He is chasing this thing towards the tree line, as he puts it. It shoots him another look of anger this time. The first one was of concern. This look is clearly one of anger. And it looks ahead at the tree line, and the hind quarters come up under the animal, and it begins running like a man, like a sprinting runner, and it jumps a great distance up into the trees. Now, as he starts to run, he's able to see its muscle and its structure, and it was something that was designed to go on all fours as much as it was designed to run upright. He went into so much detail as to say that he hit a pollen cloud that came off of the tree. When the thing hit the tree so hard, it kind of shook a big cloud of pollen off of it. And as he pulled his plane up, he had to fly right through that plane or that cloud of pollen. And he did a loop around, and he saw the trees next to it moving as though it was perhaps hopping from tree to tree, but he never did see the creature again. So he estimated it to weigh anywhere from 300 to 500 pounds. He said he was thinking closer to 3 until he saw how hard it hit that tree and how much of a cloud came off of it. And he said only something, just saw a solid brick that weighed hundreds of pounds could make something like that rattle off of this tree. And it went in excess of 30 miles an hour, possibly close to 40 miles an hour on all fours, and did not seem to slow down when it went up on 2 legs. Now, he still had a job to finish. He finished spraying the fields, And this is where it gets even more interesting. He goes back and lands his plane at the farmer's land. They had a little runway there that kind of tied into a gravel road dead end type of thing that he used as a runway. And he landed the plane, and the farmer came out with a couple of beers like he often would to help him quonset the plane. And as they're doing so, he tells the farmer, hey, you tell the kids that bicycle and play around here to be careful. I think there's maybe an escaped gorilla, an escaped circus freak, circus animal, something running around out here that is big enough to do some serious damage. And the farmer, after hearing his description of, what he had seen, he said, well, oh no, those aren't gorillas. Those are called boogers. And they're all over. And again, to articulate, because this was shocking to me, other people are pretty familiar with this apparently, but booger, as in like a little kid, you got a booger, B-O-O-G-E-R. I said, those are boogers. They're all over down here. They tend to steer clear of farms and metallic sounds and vehicles. And they come out at dusk and they go up at dawn. And for the most part, if you don't bother them, they don't bother you. This was also when plastic feed lids had just started being manufactured for farms to kind of quiet themselves down a little bit, a little easier to sleep through the night, etc. And this farmer went on to say that he had bought a bunch of plastic lids, only used them for a few months, and then went back to the metal lids because animals were popping up missing, and he had reason to believe these specific creatures were coming in closer to his farm because there wasn't enough metal rattling coming from it. Now, this friend of mine, who's in his 20s, 30s at the time, and is, again, a former fighter pilot from Vietnam and an avid hunter, had never heard of a quote-unquote booger before, had no idea that something like this existed. It's worth mentioning to the kids at home, this is before the internet. It wasn't like he could just get in his truck and search booger on his phone. He would have had to go so far as to go to, a library and try to look it up, and I'm not sure what he even would have found if he had looked up the word booger at that point in time in the 80s. So he drives back, and he said that he just never talked about it simply because he didn't understand it. He didn't have anything to talk about. He saw this thing that he didn't understand. A farmer seemed to understand it. Other people in that area that he saw it at seemed to understand it. He didn't understand it, so he didn't talk about it. He kind of insinuated he had an exciting enough of a life, that he had plenty of material to hold the conversation. He didn't have to, pull up stuff that he wasn't familiar with. Now, he said that it was almost 10 years went by, and he's in search of with Leonard Nimoy is on TV, and he's sitting there watching it, and the Pacific Northwest footage of Patty that we've all seen walking across the sandbar, filmed by Patterson and Gimlin, he sees that footage. Now, this is his first time ever seeing that footage, and as he said, he about dropped his TV dinner, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because people ate TV dinners back then. But he was so specific as to say he about dropped his TV dinner because that is exactly what he saw roughly give or take a decade previously along the Oklahoma-Kansas border. And he said it was exactly what he saw, without a doubt. And he sat there in awe and watched the remainder of this show, and that was when he realized that what he'd seen was, in fact, a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, and that the southern term for them is booger. Now, even though realizing that that's what he'd seen, he still didn't care to talk about it much with people. He's had one former wife that he'd mentioned it to that kind of gave him a hard time about it. He insinuated that there's maybe some other people in his life that he'd mentioned it to that maybe gave him a hard time about it. And so he just chose not to speak about it. I could tell that I was the first person and one of the few people he'd ever told, but the first person he'd told in quite some time. Again, this guy's ticking up on his 80s at this point. He's in his 80s now. So we spend the whole haircut talking about it. The whole haircut, the story unfolds to me about the crop dusting, seeing this thing going from 4 legs up to 2 feet, the farmer seemingly familiar with what it was, the people in the area seemingly familiar with what it was. And he leaves. And I can't stop thinking about it, because keep in mind, I'm the guy that likes to go out and make fun of finding Bigfoot when I'm hiking, right? And I'm just really struggling with accepting that this could be possible. Not that I don't believe him, but that it could be possible. I'm racking my brain. Gosh, there's pigs down south. There's pheasants down south. Could he have been startled a pig and the pig stepped on a pheasant and it made the pig jump? Like, my brain is always, I am not one of these every sound in the night is a Bigfoot. So with that, I really racked my brain to try to think of anything and everything it could possibly be. And lastly, resorting to, maybe he is messing with me and he's just got a really dry sense of humor and this is how he does it. So I stared at my ceiling fan almost every night for 3 weeks. This guy's a regular 3-week customer. Again, he gets a tight, still military level flat top haircut like he's had since the Vietnam War. So he keeps it crispy. And when he comes back in, I say to him, we'll call him Bob. Bob, I'll tell you, I think you got me, buddy. You really got me. You've actually had me staring at my ceiling fan rather than sleeping at night, thinking about this. And I just want you to know, if you're pulling my leg, you did it better than anybody ever had. And he looked at me with kind of a somber face and a straight face. And he said, yeah, see, that's why I don't talk about it with people. And just the way that he said it, and it's one of those, you had to be there. Maybe you didn't. I was there. And I guess this is my story. It mattered to me. I had the front row to that. He saw what he saw. And I want to go back on Bob here. I don't just believe this guy. I trust him. Again, I don't have a father figure in my life and haven't since my 30s. And there's very few people that I genuinely respect, admire, trust, and look up to. And if I was hanging from a cliff by my fingertips, out of just about everybody I know, as old as this guy is, he's the guy I'd want to see at the top of that cliff saying, hang on, Anthony, I got you. And he's the kind of guy that would get me. And so if I have that level of trust in him, not just believe him, but I genuinely trust him, I trusted this story that he saw one. So keep in mind that this is a realization that came over me without even really researching the field. I didn't know. I'm still in my brain thinking, gosh, I guess if there is any, they might be up in Oregon. What in the heck is he doing seeing one of these things in Oklahoma? What the heck is going on? Like, my brain, it was just this, I didn't know where to go with it. I did not know where to go with it. And, but I'll tell you, when I really wrap my brain around the fact that I know, trust, and believe someone that saw one of these things firsthand, it really, really did open up this whole new world for me. And I went from kind of laughing at it, thinking of it as a Loch Ness Monster type of thing. No disrespect to people that have taken this seriously for a long time, but it opened up this whole new world for me. And not just through the books and the listening to the podcasts and the accounts and all of that stuff, but as this progressed and it became something that I genuinely, personally wanted to start investigating and going out and getting involved in, I don't get sick days. I don't have an HR department I can go right off for time off. I run my own business, and every day I got to take a certain amount of money and pay into bills, and then I take what's left over, and that's my spending money. And so whenever I go do this, it costs me greatly. I have to take the money that I would have paid into my bills. I have to walk away from the money that I'm leaving on the table by not cutting hair that day. And just something as simple as a 2 or 3 day adventure cost me damn near $1,000, hundreds of dollars. So since this is something that costs me so much out of pocket, I'm not going to go running around in a cornfield looking for Bigfoot and wasting my time and money doing that. I want to know that I'm going somewhere that has a history of these things. And I've got kind of a criteria that I check off. I make sure that there is a historic history there. It can be either Native American, it can be from prospectors, it can be from the timber industry, but I want there to be historic accounts from the area. Naturally, I want there to be a current account from the area, but current accounts that you can kind of put question marks above a lot of those. 50% of them are bumps in the night. And then whenever possible, a badged encounter. A state trooper, a park ranger, a fish and game warden, a forest ranger, somebody whose testimony could put you or me in jail saying that they saw us shoot an eagle, right? I want their opinions on the place. So when I find a place that meets those 3 criteria, there's a history of them there, there are current accounts, and there are people with badges willing to tell you that they've seen them there, well, then I lace up my boots and I go start doing some investigating. Now, I have to find those accounts, right? There's no way to just snap your fingers and find out that there's people with badges in this county that have sightings. So some of it comes through history, some of it comes through looking at books and old accounts, but a large part of it is spent sitting on the phone, calling actual forestry departments, park departments, wildlife reserves and departments, and just asking questions that I think a lot of people are too embarrassed to call and ask. And it's been through making those calls and talking to those people specifically, and I'm not going to say I got 100% batting average, because I do not. It's about 30-70 to be fair. 70% of the time I'm shrugged off, I'm laughed at. To keep it honest, at one point I was actually passed around a parks department as a joke. They kept saying, "You want to talk to so-and-so?" And then I'd call so-and-so, and they would say, "Oh, you want to talk to so-and-so?" And they, about the seventh person they passed me off to, I kind of caught on to what was happening. But I can tell you, I can contrast that 70% with 30% that will tell you that they're there. 30% that will tell you that they've had a history going clear back to their high school years of seeing them in some of these regions. So it's not all for nothing. And it's hearing those people and some of these other exciting encounters and detailed experiences in conjunction with, we'll call him Bob's story, that really started to turn the light bulb above my head that this is happening, that this is a real thing. Now, I still have yet to decide if people running around in the forest with ball caps on, hanging donuts in trees is helping things or not. I don't know. I'm not an expert. And let's be fair, nobody is. And be wary of anybody who tells you they're a Bigfoot expert, because we don't have one on file. So come on, to call yourself that is silly. So I do think that they're out there. I'm not sure that the culture and this whole kind of hype around it is helping things, but I'm also not sure it's hurting things either. It certainly brings attention to the topic. That was something that I was surprised to find, was as I got into this, aside from asking the questions and trying to find the regions and honing in on counties and mountain ranges and specific areas to go focus my attention on this, I came to discover this whole culture. I didn't know that there were conferences and symposiums and slews of authors and more documentaries than you could shake a stick at. I had no idea that there was this mammoth scene behind this whole thing. And getting to know the scene has been, again, bittersweet, right? Like, there's all kinds of characters. I'm not sure they're all helping with credibility. There's a lot of attention seeking. There's a lot of hoaxing, and that certainly makes you scratch your head, and so on that note, Renee DeHinden is one researcher that I really enjoy and respect, but I just enjoy him because he was such a fun, zany personality. You had John Green and Tom Slick and so many other people, but something about DeHinden in particular really resonated with me. And he, at the end of his life, you could sense a sense of sorrow and waste, like he went to his grave unfulfilled. And I'm not going to make that sacrifice. So learning about this community out here, it's not up to me to find it. If I don't find this thing or get good documentation, some other guy with a thermal camera will. There's plenty of us out there running around. People will get it figured out. I'd like to be a part of it. Like, how fascinating would that be to be a part of some historical event like that? And it very well might be one of the last real adventures attainable to a middle American blue collar guy like myself. I'm not climbing Everest anytime soon, but I get the sense and feeling of adventure when I embark on this thing. And so, since I don't know, I can't say I'm a knower, but I can say that I am a believer And to keep from going to my grave empty-handed, I have put a timeline on this. I'm giving myself 10 years, and I've been doing it for 5, but I started the 10 marker when I turned 45. So I'm 2 years in. I've got 8 years left. And so I'm going full throttle. I'm spending a lot more money on this than anybody else I know. I'm trying to go deeper than other people I know. I'm trying to spread my net as wide as I can and kind of burn the candle at both ends for the next 10 years. And then when I turn 55, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'll probably keep my drone and maybe my thermal camera for making sure that there aren't mountain lions when I'm out on future hikes and stuff. But I'm going to let that passion burn itself out for good reason. Because again, there's plenty of other people out there willing to pick up the torch. It's not like it all needs to lie in my lap. And I don't want it to drive me crazy, which I've been in this long enough. I can see how it could over time. And I've lived such a good, full life that so far, even that to set myself up to go to my grave feeling like I missed out on something would be my own doing. And I don't want to sell myself short like that. So I have given this a lifespan, which is something I'm not sure I've heard any other researchers doing. Maybe they have. I'm not trying to claim that I'm charting new territory with that, but for my own sanity and to also open myself up for other hobbies. This is such a captivating, enthralling, it takes so much of your time and effort that you kind of spend all of your spare time and effort. It very quickly replaces your other hobbies and passions. And with only one life, it'd be nice to, have some other things on that cake than just this whole midlife crisis Bigfoot thing that I've kind of stumbled upon here. So that's rambling. That's what rambling sounds like, folks. But that also, in a nutshell, is what really got me into this. That I know a guy that saw one, and I believe him. The believing him led me to do my own research and not just watching guys on TV putting, like I said, donuts in trees, and hearing from people. I have talked to people myself with badges on that will look you in the eye and tell you that they're out there. And they will tell you that in Oklahoma. They will tell you that in Arkansas. They will tell you that in Missouri. And knowing that firsthand and seeing that in kind of conjunction with the history I have with quote unquote Bob, has just been fascinating. And I think that any person that saw it how I saw it and kind of tripped upon it the way I tripped upon it would be captivated by it the way I'm captivated by it. It's almost unavoidable for me. Anything else?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're just getting warmed up.
All right.
Actually,
I like it.
What you were saying about the fact that you own your own business and, you just can't cut and run reminded me of Steven. He has a similar situation, don't you, honey?
I own my own business, and I'm in the same boat as you. If I take time, I take time off. I'm taking money out of my pocket. It's not just that I've earned the money and saved up so I could take the time off, but if my time is off, I don't earn while I'm gone. And so there's that double-edged sword, and you have to straddle that. And so I totally understand exactly what you mean. But getting into that, you mentioned how you find your sites and kind of your idea, your approach. I want to give you kudos for just honestly having cojones enough to call up Park Service and Forest Service and all that and ask them about Bigfoot. That is bold.
Very.
I don't know many people that own up to that.
I'll tell you where it came from. Before I was a master barber, I was a corporate trainer for a telemarketing firm. And phone rejection is my game, but also getting you to talk about things or give up your credit card number or whatever when you might not want to is also something that I'm a master at. And I really, really believe that my years of being a telemarketer helped with talking to these people, because it also helped muzzle the rejection. And when I say credit card numbers, it was legally. I was never a phone scammer. I'm talking back in the day when, hey, we want to sell you a subscription to Sports Illustrated, and you give it. And not everybody though is comfortable with doing that. So being a telemarketer takes a lot of finesse and also an ability to kind of step over the rejection. And although I'm glad I got away from that as a career years ago, I can attribute it to greatly helping this venture. It's very easy for me to cold call somebody, put my best foot forward, try my hardest to get a sale out of them, quote unquote, and then not be too butthurt, when I don't. But it is worth mentioning that 70-30 aren't great odds, but they're better odds than I think people might realize,
That's fascinating. And you're right. The skill set there that you had with the telemarketing and everything else, I can see that being definitely a benefit, especially in that particular kind of approach. That being said, when you get your time off, what is it you do? You've established a history. You've got an area you're going into. What's your modus operandi? How do you go out there? What do you deploy? That kind of thing.
Do you camp overnight? Do you set up trail cams?
Yeah.
What exactly is the method of research there?
Oh, let's see. I'll go down my list of equipment. I've got infrared. I've got thermal. I've got a drone. I've got an array of infrared day and night trail cams. I've got walkie-talkies. I've got plaster casting kits in case we come across, some tracks. And then just your standard slew of hiking stuff as well. So I try to, I am one of the camera guys. You got people that are into cameras, people that aren't. I'm a fan. I'm a believer rather that eyes in the field are better than no eyes in the field. A camera in the field is better than none. So I have my areas, my main primary area, which I'm not afraid to say, and people familiar with this topic, especially in the southern regions, have probably heard it before. The Wichita Mountains, Ouachita Mountains, and they start in southeastern Oklahoma and blur over into Arkansas. They're about 300 miles wide by about 150, or about 300 miles long by 150 miles wide. And the area is, for lack of a better term, simply too rocky to develop. They can't run plumbing back in there. They can't run electricity back in there. It's there. You can drive for over 2 hours and not see a place to stop and get gas, go to the bathroom, not see any signs of habitation. I'm not sure many people in the Midwest realize that there's a place that uninhabited. I didn't. I had no idea that there was a place like that. And even when you look into Oklahoma and Arkansas's parks departments and their state park guides and stuff, the Wichita Mountains hardly mentioned at all. I'm not going to go so far as to say there's a conspiracy to try to keep you out of there or anything, but they certainly aren't advertising to pull people there. And to give you an idea of how prehistoric feeling this place is, there's a small lake in the Wichita Mountains that possess the only freshwater jellyfish on the entire planet Earth. And they have been there since prehistoric times. And they are in the Wichita Mountains. So when I say this place feels like it's been untouched since like times of the Neanderthal, there's scientific proof to point towards that. This place has pretty much remained untouched. And as someone who has spent quite a bit of time there myself and gotten down into the depths of it, not only do I believe firmly that there are Sasquatch there, and there's a deep, deep history of them there, I will go so far as to say I believe there could be a small tribe of undiscovered Indians out in there. And somebody could laugh at that off in the audience if they want to. Whoever's laughing at that hasn't been there. I firmly believe that there could be small tribes of Indians still living back in there that have learned to survive without fire and smoke that we simply aren't stumbling upon, perhaps even responsible for some of these tracks we're finding in these remote areas. I'm telling you, it defines the term no man's land. And so that's where I like to go. Back to being a barber and the connections that it's brought me. Not only did the fascinating story of this gentleman lead me to this, but I've got all kinds of other connections through this. One of them is the guy, I don't want to say his name, but he runs our local zoo. I guess you don't know what town I'm in, so I'm in Kansas. But he runs our local zoo, a big zoo. He's got 3 PhDs. He's a zoologist, he's a primatologist, and then I can't remember, reptile stuff. And very smart guy. He is fascinated by the Sasquatch topic. He's had lunch with Jane Goodall years ago when she came and spoke at our zoo, and she's a believer of Sasquatch. Now, if you look it up online, that's I guess not new news, but it was to me when I heard it from him, and I was just fascinated that Jane Goodall, of all people, was a believer of this. And again, her being a believer really pushed him in the direction of being fascinated by this. He's a see it to believe it guy, and as am I, and I respect him for that. But him being the runner of our zoo and a primatologist, he handles all of the primate stuff there, and he's going to work with me to get some heavily scented materials from the zoo we're going to go for some chimpanzee scent, we're going to go for some gorilla scent and some ape scent and possibly some orangutan scent. And my next mission, I work best when I have goals and then I accomplish those goals. And right now, my next goal is to obtain a high-end satellite solar cellular camera that can send me pictures in real time on my phone anywhere I am in the world. They're not a cheap investment, but I believe it to be a worthy one. And then there's a monthly fee that comes with keeping the service going. So my goal now is to take some of the knowledge I've accumulated from my time in the Wichita Mountains, find a prime spot way off the beaten path. Now, I know some people in the audience might think, somebody's going to steal your camera. Again, you haven't been here. There ain't nobody out here, man. And I know where there are spots where there are even less than nobody. And it's those spots where I believe the Sasquatch to hang out, and it's those spots that I'm going to try to work my way into. And my goal by March of this year is to get this camera figured out. Well, bought. I'm a few $100 away from being able to purchase it, but that'll happen here within the next month. And then I'm going to buy it. I'm going to figure it out. I got a local park that I always do test and practice runs with local wildlife, possums, and there's a couple of little packs of coyotes that live back in there. And I'll go in there with some hot dogs and lay them out and just kind of get used to the angle and how does it handle with a morning glare. How's the solar charge handling with a little shade, with a lot of shade, with no shade. And once I get the device figured out satisfactory, I'm going to go back into the Wichita Mountains into what I have found to be a high traffic area. Again, it should go without saying, if it's a high traffic Sasquatch area, it's a zero traffic human area. And I'm going to get down in there, mount this solar cellular satellite camera, and off in the trees in the distance, tie off an orangutan, a quilt or blanket or towel. It all depends on what he's able to work out. He made it sound like they're kind of a rag towel-like substance that he'll leave in their pens for some time. And we'll have the orangutan, the chimp, the ape, and the gorilla, and I'm going to tie them off in different branches. I'm doing this rather than food this time because I've exhausted hot dogs, pork, chicken, beef, both cooked and raw, and eggs. I've gotten some fascinating footage of wildlife doing fascinating things with these baits, but no Bigfoot. So if I put up food, it's only going to last a minute. There's no sense in having a camera that can be left in the field for 5 years when a hot dog is going to last one night. But you can't eat a towel with a bunch of ape scent on it. And so the plan is to get these things tied off in the trees far enough apart from each other where the scent can radiate out its own kind of trail, if you will, but also within view of this camera, which has a pretty good long shot sensor as well as photo ability, and leave it for 5 years and move on to somewhere new. I've put in a lot of time here. I know that they are here. As for mentioned, with my business and everything, it's so costly for me to just try to get there to spend any amount of time. And usually when I do, I've got my son or a friend or my wife or somebody with me, and that comes with conversation and beer and multiple vehicles, or you do all kinds of sounds and things that I'm not sure are always helping the cause. And so this will give me something quiet and silent with, as far as I know, nobody else has taken the level of putting out, primate scented things in this region. And then I can leave it there for a long period and know that there's a fishing line in there, so to speak, and troll myself over somewhere else and start focusing somewhere else. But I do believe that I am on to an area where they are. I'm not saying it's the only area. I believe they're in the Ozarks and in a lot of places around there. And if anybody ever takes the time to kind of Google Earth, you can just pick any of them: Mark Twain National Forest, the Ozarks, Devil's Den, Arkansas, the Wichita Mountains, any of those areas. Find one of those big green areas on Google Earth and then slowly pan back from it. And you can clearly see where rivers and streams and patches of forest tie all of those regions together. And it's really fascinating to me that there are not sightings outside of those regions. They're very specific to very specific regions. Now, if these were Dracula sightings or unicorn sightings, well, they'd be all over the place, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they be seeing them in Omaha and Des Moines and everywhere? It's fascinating to me that these things are in very specific regions, and their history lies in very specific regions. And even today, the sightings occur in these very specific regions, and these regions can be seen with today's technology through Google Earth to be woven together in such a way where a coyote living in Oklahoma could very easily, and probably often do, make their way up through Arkansas and then eventually maybe even into Missouri. And if a coyote can do it, if a deer can do it, why couldn't something with a bigger brain and a better stealthy ability do it?
Now that brings up a good point. I wanted to ask you about this. You mentioned that these are fairly intelligent creatures. How do you describe, how do you quantify their intelligence? Where do you think they are?
Where they are with their intelligence, you mean?
Yes.
My personal opinion is that they are evolved versions or descendants of Neanderthal. And if you pay attention to our history, we were told that anywhere between 30 and 50,000 years ago, the Cro-Magnon man, killed out the Neanderthal. Well, when you look at the history, Neanderthal was known to be much more robust than we were. To steal a word out of Rambo, they could eat things that would make a billy goat puke. Like they could eat just about anything, stomach just about anything. Very thick bones, were acclimated to extreme temperature changes. And I think that, as Cro-Magnons often do, right, we like to just kind of automatically assume we're number one at everything. We're the top of the food chain. We're the top of this. We're the top of that. I think we assumed victory over the Neanderthal without ever actually having it proven. I don't think that we killed out Neanderthal. I think that we drove them to the depths of the forests and to the tops of the mountains. And just as we have evolved towards science, the stars, having cars, clothing, sending our children to school, all of the things that make us human, I believe that these creatures have evolved towards what's in their best interest, just as we have ourselves. And what would be in their best interest? Well, probably to avoid us. Best way to do that is to adopt a nocturnal lifestyle, to hunt, gather, forage, perhaps even store up for cold temperatures, to avoid society and human beings and farms and construction equipment and all of these things. It would be in their best interest to evolve in that direction. So rather than a killing out of Cro-Magnon over Neanderthal, I think Cro-Magnon drove Neanderthal to the depths where we can't go. And as someone who's spent a lot of time in no man's land, I can tell you there's a lot more places that we can't go than the average person sitting on a couch would ever know. There is plenty of space, city-sized places where we cannot go. And there's more and more of them in the Pacific Northwest, but some of them still exist today in in the South, in the Midwest. There's very specific mountain ranges and regions where these sightings happen over and over again. I believe that that comes with the introduction of the white man kind of pinning down certain colonies of them. While I'm talking about it, I believe that they are the same creature, just like a bear in Oklahoma and a bear in Canada are both bears, but one weighs 150 pounds and eats berries, and another one weighs 1,000 pounds and eats elk, right? Like they've both, as aforementioned, evolved to be what they need to be to survive the best in their environment. And I believe these creatures have done the same. I think that with the introduction to the white man to America, we've pinned down colonies of them. What's happened as a result of pinning down those colonies is inbreeding. And what you see in the southern states, what people refer to so often as boogers, the Fouke monster, creek devil, etc., they often display those very traits of inbreeding. They got 3 toes. They got 6 toes. They're more aggressive. They have facial features of things that have Down syndrome. They're a lot more aggressive. They're not afraid to kind of get in the face of people, steal chickens out of your farms, etc. You get up into the Pacific Northwest, which would, in my theory, have a thicker, more diverse gene pool of these. You've got a lake in Oklahoma, and you've got an ocean up in British Columbia, Canada, Washington State, and that whole kind of area that bleeds together up there. Now, I find it interesting that the reports that come from up there, they're known to try to speak. There's even document, as we all have heard, of the Moorhead tapes of them having language up there. There's hikers that have encounters of them coming out on the trail and displaying old Indian hand symbols, such as the how symbol and stuff towards them. So with more diverse gene pools comes an ability for there to be a level of history there for them to pass on, as well as more diversity, a healthier species, so to speak. And then you get a little further down south, and they're much more creature-like and kind of reacting impulsively and instinctually. So that's a hard question to answer, because humans like to compare the word smart to what we consider to be smart. Well, we only have 26 characters in our alphabet. Dolphins have over 3,000. So who's really smart there? The people that need 26 clicks and clacks to communicate, or the creature that needs 3,000 clicks and clacks to communicate? So it's really open to speculation. But I do think that these things are smart enough to stay away from us. I do think that there are varying levels of intelligence, just like there are with people. You've got Wall Street lawyers. You've got people in third world countries sitting around fires eating rats right now. You've got somebody who's got the spare time to go mountain climbing on a break from their dentist job. And you've got somebody out there like living off of whatever they can find in the shells that they are able to living off of whatever they're able to find out of the shells they can find on their local beach. So we ourselves are a wide-ranging species. Every species I've ever studied or gotten to know on this planet is a very wide-ranging species, and I believe that these things are no exception. And I think that that goes for explaining why they're seen in different colors, why they are seen in different sizes, different even so far as descriptions on what they might even look like. You know, look at human beings. If an alien came to Earth and saw people and went back to its alien planet, and the alien god said, "So, tell us about these humans. What do they look like exactly?" Well, some of them are tiny and black, and some of them are big and fat and white, and some of them are red and medium sized, and some are, you know what I mean? Like, you would sit there for an hour explaining to the alien god what the heck we look like. And I hear that in people when I hear them trying to explain what Sasquatch looks like. It's no different to me. They're a species. They're Neanderthal, which has been known to parallel pretty closely to Cro-Magnon. So it's within reason for me that they would have the same varying types of characteristics that people come with, moreover than, you know, coyotes or squirrels or other creatures of the forest that tend to be pretty cookie cutter. I can see why Neanderthal would come with all of these variances. And to summarize an answer to your question, those variances don't only come with description. I think that they also would come with intelligence, same as people, right?
No, I think you're right about that. I do. I know you have a hard time getting off, and I know you want... Oh, go ahead.
I'm just happy to be able to talk about this with people and with someone that, is into it, because there's so many people right now at this very moment worried about the Chiefs football game, And it's
isn't that the truth?
I'm not against sports, but it's like this is so much more fascinating to me. And you'll notice that I've got a group that I started, and I didn't start that group for attention or anything like that. I started it, if anything, for quite the contrary. I don't feel like I can talk with my standard newsfeed friends about it. I got cousins that give me a hard time. Next thing you know, you're arguing with some guy named Mark from the accounting department in a company you worked for 20 years ago about if Bigfoot's real or not, right? So I got tired of doing that and having to constantly explain myself. So I kind of set this little side group up, and my mom is into it, my aunt's there, and old friends and stuff. And that way, at least when I do kind of go on my little theories or whatever, I'm talking to a somewhat captive audience that has chosen to be a part of that. So it's nice to talk to you guys and whatever audience is out there, whether they agree with my theories or not. And I might agree with some of theirs and might not agree with some of them. It's just nice to talk to some people that are willing to be open-minded enough to realize that there's sometimes more than meets the eye, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I appreciate, moreover, the audience that take the time to kind of open their minds up to something like this. Not everybody does that. We're a select few, and I really believe our lives are broadened by it. And every great thing that's ever been discovered was discovered by somebody who thought like that. So I try to remind myself of that whenever I get discouraged, that, nothing new was ever found by anybody who wasn't necessarily, you got to look for it if you're going to find it,
Absolutely.
You got to pay to play.
Well, thank you, Anthony. That's quite a compliment. That's why we started the Cryptid Connection podcast, really. It's just a place for people to express themselves in other ways that they would not be able to. So
yes, but
thank you for the compliment.
I like it.
I got to admit, I draw the line. We generally only allow relatively sane people to talk about it.
I like it. Thanks for making the exception with me.
Yeah, there you go. No.
I don't know. I think there's kind of a wide spectrum there between, what you consider sane or whatnot. Everybody has their own opinions.
Anthony,
that's true.
Anthony,
yes,
you're in the same boat as me as far as trying to make the most of your time when you're out. Mm-hmm. How often do you get out? And do you have like I know with myself, I try not to go out unless I can get X amount of time at a minimum out. How do you balance that with it, and how often do you actually manage to get out?
Not as much as I would like, right? And I know that anybody who's into this probably feels the same way, because it's such a passion. I'd love to be out there all the time. Also worth mentioning, I'm married, and you're quite fortunate, Stephen, because you guys are married, yeah? Is that your wife?
Yes, she
is. So you are so fortunate to have a wife that has chosen to ride this roller coaster with you, because many of us in the community don't have that. I would go so far as to say I'm pretty sure Bigfoot is a large cause of divorce in many cases. And you'll notice that many researchers have went through several wives. So consider yourself very lucky for having somebody that tolerates that. My wife puts up with it, and she somewhat believes and knows what I've experienced and hears what I've discovered and stuff. But it's not her jam. She likes purses and shoes and vacations on beaches and that kind of stuff. So to keep the balance of being a good husband and making our vacations worthwhile for her, while also still trying to fit in this time for my hobby, have proven to be kind of difficult, because I can't just save for this. I have to save for those beach trips and cruises too, to kind of keep her happy. So in answer to your question, I don't get out as much as I would like. I get out about 6 serious times a year. And out of those 6 times a year, I'd say most of the time, half of them are like vacation / Bigfooting, right? Like I talked the wife and the son into going four-wheeling and dirt biking in the RV, and we're all going to go do it. And then they don't really know that I'm targeting a place that I know has a history, right? And so we're going to the Mark Twain National Forest, and I'm taking everybody four-wheeling and dirt biking, and really I know that there's a history there. And then we go four-wheeling and hang out all day, and then when the sun goes down, I kind of pull out the thermal and go, honey, I'll be back in a few hours. I'm going Bigfooting. And she's caught on over the years.
That
she's
sounds
caught on
familiar.
over the years, and she knows when she sees me loading the thermal and infrared and everything and the trail cameras in the RV, she starts rolling her eyes because she already knows we're going to Bigfoot country. But she doesn't read the maps like I do. She just thinks we're going to Arkansas, right? Like she doesn't know why. I'm the one that knows where we're going and why we're going. But so half of those times, 3 out of the 6 times, they're half vacation, half Bigfooting, and then about three, maybe 4 times a year, real deal, serious. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it, and this is where I'm going. And when I do get to go, I'm almost embarrassed to say I only get 3, maybe 4 days at best to go. And I know that that's not an adequate amount of time to research anything, especially something as elusive as this topic. So that's why I'm trying to put my eggs in the basket of this cellular solar camera that I can put out there. So 6 times a year, 3 times they're vacation hybrids, 3 times are serious. I've been out with everything from friends that I've recruited that weren't necessarily believers, to friends that I've recruited that are believers, to meeting people off the internet that I believed to be mutual researchers and believers. And I'm not sure I'll do that again. That has pulled some pretty interesting things into my life. And anybody who's into this, it's something that doesn't go acknowledged. There's some pretty weird people into this, and this opens up a pretty weird gateway. And I can understand that. I get that. I'm just not so sure that some of the people that are really, really into this topic are helping it as much as maybe they think they are. You know, we've all heard the show Sasquatch Chronicles. I like that show, and I found them on Facebook, and I liked the page on Facebook, and oh my gosh, it's just a constant parade of people circling pictures of the bushes in their backyard saying, look, it's a Bigfoot. And there's no big, it's a bush. It's clearly a bush. I can see the street behind the bush with a stoplight and a school, you know, like it's not a Bigfoot there. But there's no shortage of these pictures. And, you know, again, is it helping? Is it hurting? I guess, you know, attention to anything is just that. It brings attention to it, but I'm not certain that it's always helping. And I'm rambling on beyond the how often do I get out. So 6 times a year, 3 to 4 serious, shooting for more. And this cellular solar camera, I think, is going to be a really, really good step for me here coming up in the next month or 2. So let me ask you guys a question then. And this is a bit of a kind of controversial person in the field. What are your thoughts on Todd Standing?
I'm going to say no comment, other than the fact that I have watched some of his documentaries that he's created. I just don't know enough to say too much about him.
Isn't it strange how overzealously people that don't like him seem to be? I mean, they like, well, people don't like that guy.
No, it's because of this. I don't know enough, and the evidence he has tried to, you know, do, and the behaviors that he has tried to do are questionable. I can't say he's hoaxing, but I can't say he's not. And without having to do some real sleuthing and interviewing with people, things like that. I run a podcast. I know if I wanted to, it would be easy to twist how someone says. And so when I see something like Dr. Meldrum on there, or who else was it? It wasn't Bindernagel. Who who was it?
No, it was Les Stroud.
Well, it was Les Stroud too, but there was also there was another biologist that had gone out there. I can't think of it. Anyway, they don't. As far as
Meldrum, you already said Meldrum.
Oh yeah, it was
right?
Meldrum, but there was someone else that was out there with him, and I'm trying to remember who it was.
Regardless.
Regardless.
Was it Donder Nagel or whatever his name is? I can't remember.
It might have been, but
yeah.
I'm actually thinking it may not have been. But the thing is, I haven't heard really them yelling about saying, "Hey, we don't agree with it," or they're trying to distance. They've just been quiet on it. And so that makes me think, well, at least they were on the scene. They may have had something, who knows? So honestly, I'm in the air, but I'll address what you're talking about people either being generally believing him or they're really vocal against him. The people that are vocal against him are really just feeling, they're feeling like they're seeing a hoax, and they don't want that attention being brought. They don't want that face on the community. The problem is they're coming from very different points of view. And I mean, because you'll get people that are completely flesh and blood and scientific oriented like we are, who would object to him for certain reasons. You'll get equally vocal people that are going against him, but they're coming from a completely woo children of the forest type viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And so they're all attacking him, but they're attacking him for very different reasons. And
Absolutely.
that's the thing. So
yeah.
that's
there's
where
a
I
wide
stand.
gamut when it comes to that guy. Stephen, you might identify with this. Part of why I don't have a lot on why I don't believe him. I'll tell you a few things on why I think I do believe him. One is I'm a big fan of put your money where your mouth is. And when you look at that guy's arsenal of the whatever the heck you call those 6-wheeled things with steering wheels that float on the water, these amphibious off-road vehicles, and the array of equipment, and quitting his day job and throwing himself into this full time. He's a bit of a rambunctious personality, yes, but he doesn't strike me as attention hungry. And as somebody myself who's self-employed and is paying dollar for dollar out of my own pocket to kind of go down this path, you only do something like that if you take it seriously. I'm a little more skeptical of people that are like, hey, I was on a hike with my dog and I saw one, than I would be over somebody who's like this, who spent thousands of dollars and years of his life researching it. Now, his footage is questionable. Again, I resort to my array of contacts and people I know, one of which being my primatologist buddy. And when that came out, I had it queued up. I got this little cord where I could plug my phone into my TV out here at my barbershop, and I queued it up on Netflix, kind of waiting for his arrival. And he showed up, and I was like, hey, before I cut your hair, I want to show you this documentary that's on Netflix. And I had the second marks queued up to the 3 main Squatch ones. You had Blinky, we like to call him, right, the chubby one sitting still blinking. You had the weird kind of cat-faced one with the hair around his face. And then you had the one at the very end looking upwards towards him through the log. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I showed these videos to my primatologist buddy, and he kind of smirked at Blinky, and we never did get back to talking about Blinky, really. He kind of stroked his chin a little bit over the cat-faced one and squinted his eyes and asked me to replay the one looking through the log 3 different times. He said, replay that. And he took his glasses off and got super close to my TV, and he said, replay that again. And we sat down, or I washed his hair, and we sat down. I could tell he was just kind of mulling it over. And he said, I'm not sure about those first 2, but that third one, what got me was the eye movement. Humans don't move their eyes that fast. Apparently there's something in a primate's optic nerve, and they're able to dart their eyes around at a speed twice as fast as we're able to. And it serves them well. It serves them well in nature to keep an eye on insects and birds and things like that around them. And he said unless that was played on fast forward, there's no way that could be a person in makeup. Now, when you go back and you watch that third clip, you can see some breathing and some movement in the background of leaves and stuff, just nature doing what nature does. And it's not played in fast forward. So, I don't have a lot of conclusion to say on that. I don't know about Blinky and I don't know about Catface, but that one where it's kind of the jet black coal kind of face looking up through the hole in the log and the eyes dart back and forth, unless that's on fast forward, that's not something somebody in a costume could do. That's also not something that I even caught, right? Like, I don't know how fast things move their eyes. So having this buddy who's kind of got one foot in the believing pool with this and having the knowledge that he has, for me, has proved to be invaluable. And I'm not done with my story yet, as far as the 8 years ahead of me are concerned. And I really believe that this friend of mine and his connections with the primate, not only world, but directly, like with primates, can bring me primate-scented stuff. I really feel like that might play a hand in this, even though I don't believe these creatures to be primates, but to be Neanderthal. We've all heard the stories of the stink, and the stories of the stink. If you ever if you're ever allowed to put your head inside of a gorilla exhibit, it nothing short of describes exactly what people are describing when they talk about these Sasquatch encounters. So I can't help but to feel that there might be some similar, evolutionary trait or who knows, but that there's something similar there, perhaps enough so that it would draw the interest of one, to come out of the woodwork. But I always found that interesting. And with Todd, I don't know. Does his personality help him or hurt him? I don't know. I'm the same way. I get overzealous about things. I get excited about things. If I'm turned on by something, look the hell out on volume 10. If I'm bored by something, look the hell out. I got better stuff to do, and he's kind of the same way. And I think sometimes that puts people off that he is so, overzealous. But, let you try selling your life. You give everything up and sell your life over to some idea that 99.999% of the world wouldn't do. And tell me if you wouldn't have to have a certain level of conviction and, maybe even craziness to do that. So the jury's still out with me, but I do like to ask other people in the field what their thoughts are about it. And you two are pretty neutral, really. I mean, aren't really, it's usually a polarizing topic, and you guys are kind of in the middle, and I'm kind of in the middle. But I've been shocked by how many people in the community seem to just hate the guy. And these are the same people that are liking pictures of circled bushes in people's backyards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Red Circle Society. We know exactly what you mean. There are some valid pictures that are circled. Okay, there are some questionable things, but then there are where did you get that from? So we take it like we do with everything else. Stephen and I take things with a grain of salt most of the time.
My general rule of thumb is if it requires a circle, though, I'm on record for it. It's not there.
Hold on, Stephen.
Yes.
I strive to learn. So I strive to learn something new every day, and I thank you for that lesson. I'm taking that away from this, if nothing else. If you have to circle it, boom. There it is.
It's not that there's nothing. It's not that there's nothing in the circle. What I'm saying is, if you have to, and it depends what's in the circle. Honestly,
that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
if
you're trying to circle, look at this particular tree break, and they've got that circle. Yeah. That's obviously one thing, or you got an arrow pointing to it. But if you're trying to say, I've got a picture of Bigfoot, and you had to circle that picture, circles. You had to circle that picture. That picture's not good enough for you to present to anybody. It's not clear enough.
I agree.
The same thing with blowing a picture up. Mm-hmm. I do computers. I do IT. I know how a computer works with a photo.
It distorts
and you blow a photo up, all you do is expand the pixels. It will blur it out. And you get that to a certain point and you're playing pareidoia. Your brain is trying to make sense of the dots. And you just can't zoom in. I mean, this is why higher and higher resolution cameras are necessary. Is so if you do want to zoom in, you can still zoom in without actually seeing artifacts that aren't there. And so, in general, if your Bigfoot picture requires you to point out the Bigfoot, it's not worth really showing usually. But now, go ahead.
As the famous now deceased Mitch Hedberg once said, "Isn't it scary to think that there's just a big fuzzy creature out there walking around?" and the joke, the joke being that Bigfoot isn't an ape; it's a fuzzy. It's
a fuzzy thing.
Right?
Yes, I've often wondered if Bigfoot actually exists out of focus.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. He's just permanently out of
yes.
Out of focus. Now that in and of itself is equally as fascinating.
Well,
but you're right.
Actually,
if you got to circle it, and some of those pictures, again, as you mentioned with pixels, will make faces out of the leaves, right? Like they'll circle the picture, you look at it, and you're like, God, it kind of looks like a face a little bit. And you take a second and you let your common sense kick in, and you're like, okay, there's some shine on this leaf and some glare on that leaf, and they look like eyes and lips and, blah, blah, blah. So that can easily happen.
Yeah. And the truth is there's just not enough actual data present in a photo for you to be able to tell one way or the other.
Oh,
and so
I agree.
But now, all right, let's get back on topic here. Well, not on topic, but get farther into the interview.
Sure.
I've got a burning question.
Get an ointment for that. You want to see a doctor for that.
Okay, Doc. I want to know.
I'm with you.
I want to know what the dumbest thing you've done in regards to Bigfoot is. Everyone makes a mistake. Everyone falls off a cliff. They do something. What's the stupidest thing in Bigfoot you've done?
Your oops moment.
Yep, your oops moment. And it could be walking into a tree. Yeah.
Can I have two? Because I've got an oops like ha-ha, and then an oops like hand slapped over your face, and you slowly drag it down to the point where your lip gets cut on your index finger on the end of the drag.
Let's hear them both, Anthony.
All right. My first funny oops was, let's see, I get areas confused because they all turn into woods when I reflect back. This would be, is this the Wichita? This would be the Wichita trip. I was out at the Wichita Mountains, and there's a slight possibility this was Missouri, but I'm almost 90% it was the Wichita Mountains reflecting back. And I was night squatching. I had just gotten my FLIR thermal camera. I was quite proud of it and excited with it. And in an attempt to, I guess, fully invest in it, I was trying not to use any light at all. And through the thermal, I was able to, it doesn't just show heat signatures, it shows every signature. So for lack of a better term, I could actually see that at night through this thing, and was going through the forest on a trail. I wasn't going off-road, but I was on a trail, and I was going strictly thermal. I heard a little bit of a noise off to one side, and I kind of panned my thermal one direction, and I'm still walking slowly, kind of feeling with my feet where I'm going, and I come around a corner. And as I'm a bit of a bend, rather, and as I'm kind of coming around this bend and feeling my feet start to step off the path, I start to swath the thermal back. And again, I'm completely blacked out. I do have a light with me, but it's hanging off of my belt. And it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I am solo on this trip, and which I'm starting to enjoy doing more and more, by the way, side note. And I pan my thermal back around, and everything turns orange, instantly turns orange. The whole screen is orange, and I am being pummeled on both sides of my head. And so my brain And the first thing my brain says is, oh my God, this thing is so big, it's taking up my entire screen. And the second thing I feel is something smacking both sides of my head and all these crazy sounds. I do have a pistol on my hip, but I got one hand on this thermal camera with one eye shut trying to look through it. And all I can see is this red and flashing and beating. And I'm falling backwards, trying to get a hold of my pistol out of my little side holster as I'm not just stumbling, but literally falling backwards onto my back. And I'm just terrified. My brain is racing. Oh my God, it's Bigfoot. Oh my God, it's a mountain lion. Oh my God, you fell off a cliff. Oh my God, just all these horrible things are going through my head. I had bumped my head into a roosting turkey. And I didn't even know. I guess I kind of knew that turkeys roosted in trees, but I thought they roosted like up in trees. No, they tend to roost at like a 5 or 6 foot level. Turkeys don't fly very good. So when they find a spot at like a 6 foot level, they'll hang out there. And in the process of me turning my head, I had not seen the heat signature of this thing. And by the time I turned my little thermal back around, and again, it's pitch black outside of the thermal, I hit this damn roosting turkey. Now, trust me, it was a little crazier and scarier than perhaps I portrayed it visually. But if you were there and could only imagine, it was, and I've been through some crap in my life. I swear that was the scariest 10
I honestly admit that would scare the holy hell out of me. Oh, it
scared the hell. And it was so big. And what had happened is I hit him mid-breast while he was asleep. And I startled him, and he just immediately started flapping. Well, turkeys have quite big wingspan. And I could feel the wind and him hitting me clear down my shoulders on both sides. Like, it was huge, right? Now, I don't know what's a turkey in a tree. Whatever this thing is, it's 8 feet tall, and it's able to touch me clear down my side, you know? And there was this split second of, you know, like I'm just freaking the hell out. I've never been through anything so scary in my life. And I came upon coyotes and, you know, all kinds of stuff out in the woods, and I actually quite enjoy and feel at home in a dark forest. I got past history reasons for that. But that thing scared the poop out of me.
Oh my!
So that's one.
That's a good one.
That's one kind of funny thing that happened to me. So in all fairness, I'm not really, mountain lions don't scare me as much as turkeys do, for what that's worth. And then the other one would be, right? You gotta be leery of those mountain lions, though, for sure. Mm. The other one would be my attempt at, as I said earlier, I've tried recruiting some people that were kind of into it and recruiting some friends and going out solo, tricking my family into going sometimes. And so here, several months ago, I thought, you know, there's so many other people on the internet that are into this. I'm going to kind of put out an APB to anybody that might be, you know, interested in going out Bigfooting sometime. And not only that, but as I mentioned earlier, just trying to get ideas of areas with accounts. And what better way to get an idea than to join some of these Southern Bigfoot Alliance, the Oklahoma Bigfooters Organization, Arkansas Squatchers. There's countless, as you know by now, countless organizations and outfits that are into this. The North American Wood Ape Society being one of the more, or Wood Ape Organization being one of the more credible ones, I think. So I joined up all of these pages. I'm now a member of probably 40 or 50 different Bigfoot pages. And I made up an image of where I like to Bigfoot, a picture of Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas, and kind of put a big circle on it and said, hey, I'm into Bigfooting. I've got some infrared, some thermal, some game trail cams, and a slew of other stuff. And I'm looking for some other people to go out with. If you're interested, let me know. And I wasn't quite prepared for what all would come in as a result of that. I've gotten some pretty strange responses, some strange pictures, a lot of, to recently reference, a lot of circled pictures of bushes in people's yards saying you need to come take a look at this, And I was kind of put off by it and just let it sit and simmer. And after some time, somebody reached out to me that, said they were a Bigfooter. Not only were they a Bigfooter, they were a part of a group of Bigfooters. They had seen them. They've apparently shot off rounds at them, and had a history with them dating back quite some time. Now, I was kind of scratching my chin over this. I was excited by it, but I was, a little skeptical. And I'm not going to go off and meet people just off of the internet without having talked to you a little bit. So I told the guy that I'm talking to on the phone that's telling me about this group that he's got, give me a call. Let's talk on the phone. Let's talk about this a little bit. I kind of, for lack of a better term, wanted to gauge the BS meter a little bit. Now, what I'm about to say might come across offensive to some people. You two are from Texas yourselves. However, you don't bear accents. I mean no ill will by this, but I have no other way to say it than to just be matter-of-factual about it. And I can't help but think that people would agree with me if they were open-minded enough to do so. So a Southern accent can hide an intelligence level and a truth level very, very well. Moreover than perhaps no accent or other accents could. Meaning, when you're talking to somebody with a Southern accent, a heavy Southern accent, there can be a master's degree on the other side of that, or there can be a moron on the other side of that. Heck, even in our own history, we've had presidents on the other side of that, and we've had Honey Boo Boo on the other side of that. You really can't tell. So I talked to this guy on the phone, and he's got a very heavy Southern accent, but as far as I can tell, he kind of strikes me as the kind of guy that would probably be out there seeing Bigfoot, And so I kind of go along with what he's telling me. They're seeing him all the time on a regular basis. They've got a habituated area. They've even shot at them in the past. And he's inviting me along to be a part of his expedition. He's not going to come be a part of mine, but he saw my calling on the internet and invited me to be a part of his. So I, after talking to this guy, I sign up and decide that I'm going to go, it was Arkansas where it happened. And I decide that I'm going to go to Arkansas and be a part of this thing. And after getting there, it did not take long to realize that a Southern accent can hide idiocy or a master's degree very well. And I had gotten myself into a situation that was unbecoming of myself, of my research, and perhaps even so far as to say it was dangerous. There were loaded weapons around. There was a lot of people that were not too bright doing things that were not too bright. And the thing that I took away the most was there was this kind of head figure of the whole event, and he was hell-bent on writing some kind of Bigfoot book and just kept using this Bigfoot book as a bait. Hey, Anthony, if you see anything, let me know. I'm going to put you in the book. Hey, guys over there, if you see anything, let me know. I'll put you in the book. Hey, what was that sound over there? Let me know. I want to put it in the book. And there's this handful of guys that were apparently a part of this troop, and they are just running around it, man. Every owl hoot in the night was a Bigfoot. Every coyote was a Bigfoot. Every scrape on the ground was a Bigfoot. And I played along with that as long as I could until I couldn't take it anymore. Now, is that funny? I guess you said, what were some of the funniest things that you've had happen to you in this field or since getting into this? I wouldn't call it funny, but it was definitely a joke. If that makes any sense or not. I wasn't laughing, but it was definitely a joke. And it really put things into perspective for me. Do I want to be a part of something and put my name on something and follow something and believe in something that these kind of people are running around tarnishing or trying to get attention from? The whole experience was so uncomfortable and so weird. It really, really made me take a long, hard look at just kind of the whole culture, to be honest with you, and how easily people can tend to manipulate each other. And hey, if I say I saw it and you say that we saw it and they say that we saw it, well, then they'll surely believe us and we'll all walk out of here saying we saw it. You know what I mean? Well, I didn't get into this for a bunch of people to golf clap me and say, yay, Anthony saw a Bigfoot. I got into this to go to the grave knowing that I saw one. And the more I get into this, the more it has really kind of shocked me how many detours there can be if you allow them to that road. So anybody else getting into this, the punchline to this joke would be, don't go Bigfooting in the forest with people you just met off of the internet. It might be a waste of time.
That's a good oops moment.
That's exactly it, Mike. Because this topic brings in a wide range of people. There's a very wide range of people that are drawn to this, and not all of them the brightest, and not all of them with the best intentions, and not all of them even really wanting to see a Bigfoot, just wanting to kind of piggyback on the attention that it brings. And so even though it might be a dangerous decision, after that outing, which happened here just a few recent months ago, I made the decision that from here on out, any serious squatching I'm going to attempt to go ahead and do alone. And not only for trying to eliminating the possibility of people hoaxing me, but human beings are influential just overall. That's how religions happen. It's just how things happen. We like to believe things. We like to be parts of groups. We like to feel like we're not alone in our thought processes. And so not only do I want to try to avoid the possibility of being hoaxed, I want to avoid any outside influence that people might bring unto me. I want to really come
I
at
agree
this
with you.
as wholeheartedly as I can. And I'm going to be honest, my goal here is to die knowing that these things are real. And if I can't nail that down by 55, I'm done, and I'll move on to a new question. Life's full of questions and trails to take. But this was a trail that I found worthy, and I went ahead and bought the hiking sticks and everything. Like I'm all in on it. But those are the two funniest things, weirdest things, comical things. The turkey that scared the goddamn daylights. I've never been so scared of anything in my life as I was that turkey, to be totally honest. And I came across some rather spooky things in forests, but that turkey takes the cake. And then just the joke of that outing that I fell for. But, I try to learn from everything, and everything in life offers a lesson if you're willing to take it. And, I learned what to avoid from that. And I learned that this culture comes with a wide range of people, with a wide range of needs and wants and hopeful outcomes, all with their own personal reasons behind those. And even I have my own personal reasons behind it. But unlike other things that come with the word belief behind them, I'm not sure getting together in large groups is the answer here.
We agree with you entirely on that. Smaller groups are better, I believe, for research purposes.
Yeah, smaller groups or taking it solo,
Absolutely. And you're not alone in that thought.
Yeah. So those are that's the answer to your burning question. There's the ointment, Stephen.
Well, no, I understand. Now, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing, just because it's a personal thing on mine. I'm not an advocate of solo. I'm an advocate of a two-man team.
But we do know people that go out solo,
yeah, we got
and we're not discrediting.
Yeah. But ideally, in my opinion, it's just, a two-man gives a little bit of redundancy. But you are correct. People will reinforce each other and influence what they think of. This is why if you do have some sort of an odd experience or an encounter, especially an encounter, you don't talk to each other about it. You get out of the situation immediately, once it's over, and you both go and
review your evidence and whatnot
sit
you collected,
and write down your observations, write down your experience before you talk about it and compare notes. Now, after you've written everything down that you recall from your point of view, then after it's in writing, y'all can compare notes, look at each other and everything else, because you have a record of what it is. And then okay, well, so-and-so said something and I didn't even notice that. I didn't remember that at the time or something like that. You're at least aware, oh yeah, his input helped, fill this in for me or something like that. But you still have a record within a time period. That's a basic investigator, researcher
It's a
have
better
it
way
do.
to collaborate instead of just
Yes.
buying the numbers.
Yeah, but the whole point is to walk away from the situation. Don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do anything with it. Sit down. Maybe take a few hours for it to internalize in y'all, but definitely within 12 to 24 hours, write it down in detail. It may be 2 pages, it may be 20 pages. You may get a hand cramp, but do that, because having that recall and having it put down in there, that helps your memory. It helps you get out everything while it's still fresh, but you have safeguarded it from being influenced by whoever else was there, because no 2 people are going to witness the same event the exact same way.
Even a car wreck, car wreck. You ask 3 people that saw the car wreck, and they will have. There's going to be changes.
It's situations like that, and just psychological and scientific study of witness events, and
it can be traumatizing,
recall and things like that. Yeah, that is why procedures like that exist. And so,
well, I'm like I said earlier, I'm all about lessons, and for me, I never understood really why I became self-employed. I love being self-employed, but the more solo expeditions I go on with this topic, the more I realize, I don't know how else to candycoat this, I'm willing to work with people and work for them and around them. I don't really like people necessarily. Like I don't get a lot out of being around people. So unless it's my wife or my son or my 3 dogs, which of course are people, I'm fine. I don't need confirmation. I don't need a buddy. I don't need any of that stuff. On the David Pilates missing 411 tip of things, bring it on. Like, I'm here for an adventure. I'd like to know what's on the other side of that, and I've had friends that have one toe in the community, and they're like, oh man, you shouldn't be going out alone. Have you watched these missing 411s? And I'm like, hey, so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm out Bigfooting, and I'm trying to find out what the hell happens to these people that go missing.
Yeah, you could be famous. You could be one of them.
Right.
I'm
99% sure it's mountain lions, but I'm pretty sure it's mountain lions. They get pretty big around here, but I try not to let that deter me, and I would rather go solo than deal with some of the stuff I've dealt with. And as I just recently mentioned, that last outing with those handful of jokers that I got together with kind of sealed the deal for me that, I'm probably better off taking this venture.
You could get more
alone.
out of it. Yeah, you get more out of it alone versus being with some yokels.
There is nothing more frustrating
exactly.
than feeling like you have wasted your squatching time. There's nothing
because,
more
like I said, Steve, I get 6 times a year. 6 times a year. So somebody lures you out there and steals 3-4 days of your life over some nonsense crap for attention. I take this seriously. I've only got 1 life, and that people are taking that time. So that's. I agree. There's nothing worse than feeling like your squatching time was wasted. So I pick my own paths and I follow my own targets, unless there is just something overwhelming for me to lace my boots up and head in that direction. I make my own directions. And at least now I know that the directions I'm going on, I know what's went into them. I know the amount of research that's went into them. I know the accounts of the history of the area. I know. Now, I'm not hearing it from some guy. I know. I made the call. I talked to the guy with the badge, and that makes it, I guess, more valuable, worthy, whatever you want to call it. But it's very easy to waste your time doing this. That's for sure.
That is true. Okay, let's take a little bit of a left turn here and do something a little fun. I've got a game here, and if you're amenable, Anthony, I'd like to play it with you. It's called the Quick Cryptid Connection Query. What I'm going to do is name off some cryptid names, and these are from all over the world. In this quiz, I want you to say yay if you believe it, nay if you do not, and say what if you think I'm putting a bunch of letters together and making something up because you've never heard of it at all. I've got
Now,
two
I will
Easter.
play this game. I will play this game if you can spell query.
Query. Query.
All right, I'm in.
I've got two Easter eggs in this game. I've got one that is a former known cryptid, now proven scientifically animal. And I've got a, let's call it a Bigfoot cousin, a type of creature that would be described as similar to a Bigfoot description. And just for you, I've put in a third Easter egg. It is a cryptid from your location, your area, your state. So let's see if you see that one as well. Are you ready to play my game, Anthony?
We'll play.
All right. Baba Yaga.
Nay.
Kira Pura.
Nay.
Fenrir.
You say yay, nay, or say what? I'm going to say what? Say what?
Skinwalker.
Well, now the answer is yay if I've heard of it, correct?
And
or familiar with it?
Yeah, familiar with it and kind of believe it. Maybe you're more curious about it.
A yay means you know of it and you do believe there is something
and
to
you
it.
do believe it. I'm going to say nay. I'm going to say nay.
Wolpertinger.
Wolpertinger. Now, there's 10 total that you're going to ask me. Is that correct?
I've actually got 15 on this list.
15. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out how far in I am. Wolpertinger, I'm going... Wolpertinger. I'm going to say nay.
Black Shuck.
That sounds like something that could exist. I'm going to say yay.
Champagne.
I'm going to say yay.
Sinkhole Sam.
Say that one more time.
Sinkhole Sam.
Sinkhole Sam. Well, now that's such a specific term that I don't know about it, but I got a feeling like it might. I'm going to say what? Say what?
Kraken.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know about. Yeah, I'm going to say yay. We'll go yay on the Kraken.
Devil Bird.
The Devil Bird. I'm going to say yay. Yay. I do. That could happen.
Hodag.
Hodag. Yay. And that's a Bigfoot Easter egg.
Dingo Neck.
Oh, Dingo Neck. That's pretty specific. That's a pretty specific reference to something, but I don't know about it. So I'm going to say nay. Nay.
Thunderbird.
Thunderbird. Since my first car was a Firebird that had a picture of a Thunderbird on it, I'm going to say yay.
And last but not least, Mothman.
Mothman, familiar with him. Do I think he's real? I'm sorry, folks. I don't. Like, the dander would obviously be everywhere, and nobody ever talks about the dander when it comes to Mothman. And I'm sorry, but there'd be lots of dander. So, nay.
All right, so that finishes the quick cryptid connection query.
But
We're
that should be Easter eggs for Bigfoot, and Hodag was the only one that rang a bell.
We're getting to that. The Hodag was incorrect, however, because the Hodag is more of a jackalope. It's actually a conglomeration creature. It's a pig and a wolf, and yeah. Unfortunately,
I'm sitting underneath a actual jackalope as we're talking right now. I am underneath the head of a mounted jackalope, and that is not a joke.
Oh, that's cool. Huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so any other guesses? We have the former cryptid, we have the Bigfoot cousin, and we have the local creature.
Okay, local creature. We're going to be what was the pit one? the something pit. Somebody's digging a pit or something. It had the name of something pit, something hole.
Sinkhole Sam.
Sinkhole Sam. There we go. That's going to be what because Kansas is not too bright. That's what we would call a Bigfoot. And he would be running across the field, and he would disappear, and the Kansan would say, "Well, what? Their thing went down a sinkhole. Sinkhole Sam." I can totally see it. That would be the other one.
Are you familiar with Dune, the movie Dune?
Absolutely. Moreover, David Lynch, but yes, I'm familiar with Dune.
Sinkhole Sam is a local legend from your area that is a large worm that goes into the boggy swamps in that area. So that's your local legend.
That is cool. So there's a history of these crazy big worms and some swamps here in Kansas?
Yep.
That's kind of cool.
All right. Do we want to look into the Bigfoot cousin, or do we want to look into the former creature next? Former cryptid next.
The former creature, and one of them that you said had a kind of an archaic, older sound to it, but I can't remember now. That's a lot to remember. I should have took notes. Okay. So just real quick, say the names one more time. Just spit through them quickly.
Sure. Baba Yaga, Kirapira, Fenrir, Skinwalker, Wolpertinger, Black Shup, Champay, Sinkhole Sam, Kraken, Devilbird, Hodag, Dingo Neck, Thunderbird, and Mothman.
Now, I want to say something. I've heard of the Champay before, but
I was just going to say Champay.
I've always heard it called Champy, and so there is.
I
know on that one. Not
from
Champ.
Lake Champ. Okay.
No. But I'm just saying. I know there is an alternate pronunciation for Champay.
I got my pronunciation off an official website,
I understand
and you're going to give away the answer.
I'm not trying to give away the answer.
That's what
I'm
you're
saying.
That's my answer. That's my answer.
He was going there anyway.
The Champay is actually... It's the Bigfoot cousin. It's a Choctaw legend. And on a Choctaw website, I found the pronunciation of Champay.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's 100 different names for it. I'm not fully familiar with that one. Well, that's cool though. You learn, like I said, you learn something new every day. So Champay is another native term, or is it an Australian term? They have the Wendigo and all these different places and names, rock apes, etc. Is it an American thing?
It's Choctaw. It's Native American, Oklahoma and Arkansas area.
Wow. I like that. I'm going to make a note. Champay is another...
It's Shampe. And the reference I got was the pronunciation of Champay, but Stephen has heard it called Champy before.
Yes, but that's probably because there's a bunch of uneducated people like me that are butchering the Choctaw language. So
there
it's
you go.
Very possible.
Well, we're trying to pronounce something that doesn't really exist, so we're probably okay. Or it could exist. We're not offending anybody. We're not mispronouncing French,
Oui, c'est vrai.
Right, exactly. So that was the Bigfoot Easter egg, which I'm a little let down on that I didn't know because I thought I had done my studying. Now, there was one left, and what was the last one left?
It's going to be the former cryptid, now scientifically proven creature.
Former cryptid, now scientifically proven creature. And here is where I ask you to say them again. One more time.
Sure. Baba Yaga, Kirapira, Fenrir, Skinwalker, Wolpertinger, Black Shuck, Champay, Sinkhole Sam, Kraken, Devilbird, Hodag, Dingo Neck, Thunderbird, Mothman.
Black Shuck.
Black Shuck is a legend in England, if I'm remembering. It's like a black dog. It comes as an omen to bad situations.
Oh, Okay, so what was it? What was it then?
Devil bird. The devil bird is now known as the spot-bellied eagle owl. It was an
hold
avian.
on. You can't do that. You can't say, now, had you have said the actual name, I would have guessed that. Science wouldn't name anything a devil bird. And the question was,
but
what's
that's
an
its
animal
common
that
name.
devil bird.
They call it, the locals call it a devil bird.
That is, and it's still known as in Sri Lanka.
Jennifer, what's the name? What's the actual scientific name again? Say it one more time.
The spot-bellied eagle owl.
Yeah, come on, Stephen. Do you think I might have known that one?
I warned you before
this
the
is the
interview
game.
how this show went.
No. Spotted belly owl fart or whatever the heck it was sounds a lot more believable and scientifically relevant than devil bird. And so since we're talking about an animal that I thought would exist in like textbooks, I'm like, well, surely the devil bird isn't going to exist. But no, the black spotted eagle, fart or whatever. That's, yeah, totally would have been it. So we're going to call that one a draw.
We really want to know. And this is the question that we end all of our interviews on. What is the monster under your bed? What is that spook in your closet?
The thing that gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Wow, that's a broad question. That's a broad question. I got so many different answers for that. I got long ones. I got short ones. I got, I'd say that we're alone. That this is it. That this is the best thing that not only the world, but the universe could create is us. It disgusts me. It scares me. It frightens me. It frightens me that a lot of us think that this is as good as it gets. There aren't aliens. There aren't other creatures here better than us. We're the top of the food chain. We're the top of the evolution chain. We're the top of the planetary chain. What if we are? What if we are? Look around. Look at our president. Look at our state. Look at our country. Look at our world. Look at our position. What if this is as good as it gets? That's the monster under my bed. And I think that what I'm hunting for, searching for, wanting for, waning for, instinctually driven to, willing to give large portions of my life for, is a hope or a grasp or a thread that we're not. That there's something, a romanticized view of a strand of humanity that hasn't been corrupted by all of this nonsense, or a pre-evolutionary form of us, a God version of us, a pure, untorn, astro-plane alien version of us that isn't caught up in taxes and bills and deadlines and poverty and war and all of those wonderful pretty things that make us humans. When I really get down to the root of what the monster under my bed is, I hope he's smarter than me. I hope he's better than me. I hope he's better than us. And I think that's what I'm looking for, and I've asked myself, under pitch black trees at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, what are you doing? What are you doing sitting here? That's the answer that comes back, is you're looking for something better. And or you believe or you feel in your heart like it's out there if you put in the time to look for it. And you look around and nobody else is really putting in the time. And you can't find it if you don't look for it. So That's the monster under my bed is something better. Something better.
All right, Anthony.
Fascinating answer. Thank
That
you
was
for
a
that.
very good answer. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the interview. And we really appreciate the time you gave us. And appreciate you opening up and exploring all these different aspects
of who Anthony is.
Yeah, you've been very surprising in
cool.
this interview.
Yeah, we've learned quite a lot, I think.
Well, I learned a little bit about you guys too. It was nice to get to know you guys. I hope your audience got to know me a little bit. Stephen can direct you. It's a private page. It's not up for public, and I'll be blunt. I don't put many things up with comments aloud, as I have found that this community likes to kind of attack itself from within.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to offer up perspectives, and I try to offer up theories, and you can like it or you can not like it, but I don't allow a lot of commenting on my page. So with that said, there's a thing called Anthony's Bigfoot Group. Stephen here might put up a link to it. He might not. I don't know. If you look for it, you
want
can.
us to, we'd be glad to.
I can put a link.
We'd be
to
glad
it
to.
If you'd like.
You're welcome to if you'd like to. And for those that might, partake and get involved, again, I don't not allow comments, not hear your opinions, but just to keep the infighting down, because I've seen that it's kind of inevitable with this community. And if you'd like to ride along with some of my adventures, I'm a true, genuine hunter. I've got some blood and skin and sweat in the game, and I'm not done anytime soon. I've got some years and some miles ahead of me. As far as I can tell, I'm just getting started. And if you'd like to follow along and see some of my adventures, meet some of the people I meet, see some of the beautiful scenery that I see, and some of the wildlife that I come across, and hopefully, possibly even someday, some actual firsthand footage of the Sasquatch, you're welcome to join my group. If I ever do get any footage, I'm going to release it privately to my group without the share ability or anything first before I go public with it. So if you do decide to be a part of my adventure, you'll be, riding shotgun with me on this. It won't last forever. I've got about 8 years left, but I'm putting every spare penny and every spare minute and every spare bit of common sense left that I have into this. And I'm just as hungry for the answers as all of you guys are out there. And I'm putting some miles to the soles of the boots to make it happen. And you guys are welcome to be right there with me. And thank you guys again, Stephen and Jennifer, for talking to me. It makes me feel like I'm not, not alone. It's just kind of cool to know there's other people out there that don't look at you like you're crazy for knowing these things, thinking these things, discovering these things, following these things. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for sharing
You're
your
welcome.
time with us. We appreciate it as well. You were
Yes,
very
we do.
welcome.
All right, we're going to go ahead and sign off. So, Anthony, you have a good night, man.
I'll talk to you later.
You too. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Guests of Cryptid Connection are all members of the Cryptid Connection website. Join the community, a safe, secure, and private place for all your paranormal and cryptid pursuits.
Every cowboy, he always misses when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hands grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about running, and I'll get out on the town just for myself. And that's when I saw her, and she looked right through me. And when I said I do that day, I really do. gotta leave this town to find my way. And when that plane touched down on that island town, I knew that my life's work was in their hands. So I started digging for wells of water, and I'm a hero in their eyes. It's clear to see. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idol hand, grasping at tomorrow from his plan. And I've been thinking about the time that I have wasted sitting here. 'Cause I've been thinking that all this thinking is the thing that keeps me further from myself.
The music and soundtrack for the opening is from Epic Film Score by Alex Kaskin. The closing credits are Every Cowboy by Cellophane Sam.